the school
Recording in
committee.
progress.
I will call this meeting to order since we have a quorum at 5:02 p.m. We'll begin by reading off the agenda, which includes report items, consideration of approval of co-curricular club stipends for 2025-26, consideration of approval of facilities rental policies, KF and KFR, and the manual. Consideration of approval of MASC policy updates to sections D, fiscal management, K, community relations, and L, education agency relations. Discussion and consideration of the approval of school committee's vision statement. Discussion and consideration of the WPS 2030 five-year operational priorities for the purpose of State of the Town Committee planning. And fall town meeting articles from the school committee, including discussion and consideration of fall town meeting article for enrollment and demographic study. We have an executive session, which Dr. Hackett indicates we will likely not be needing this evening, and then followed by adjournment. So, Dr. Hackett, I believe you might have said that you had just a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to report just briefly that we had a really senior team today at Morocco. They were with us for I think a couple hours all told. Started with there was you know there had to have been 12 of them. It was a big team. A little bit surprising. We crammed them all into the conference room and made them get hot and sweaty and sat next to the servers. And kidding, not really though. But they had some they just took us through a protocol that they have a lot of questions around, and Pete Lawson was there, Michelle Pryor from select board was there, so we had good representation. And what I really kind of wanted to say is that they shared with us that there were 126 applications this last round. 27 of those were for core program projects, which we would be one of those 27. 99 for accelerated repair. So we would have been in the 27 core, and then 17 of those core project schools are going through this process with the senior site visit. So the good news is we made the cut so far, and hopefully we'll continue to make our way through. But it was a good visit. They really very much appreciate the amount of work that the district has done, the town has done on Morocco, that with the life extension project, the project that took place over the summer, they saw that and understood that for what it was. But what they are always concerned about is if they do a project somewhere, is that location, is that town, school system, are they going to be able to continue to maintain and keep the building up? So that has become actually in some ways one of their biggest criteria and concern. It's not a criteria, but it is a concern. They offer workshops all the time on post-construction maintenance, and so they are understanding and have experienced over the last several years, maybe even a little bit longer, that they've built some projects in certain places and then they go and they're not being maintained. So it was very important for them to hear all that. So all in all, a good visit. We will hear from them likely at the end of November. And if we are invited one way or the other, if we're invited for eligibility, we will be invited to the December 12th MSBA board meeting. So we have a timeline, right? So that's good information to have. So and that's it.
Dr. Hackett, thank you so much for that update. And I know a lot of our Morocco families are like on the edge of their seats waiting to hear about today's visit. So this sounds like it's great news. But let's assume that in November, we get a green light from them. What is the timeline from November to shovel ready Morocco?
Oh God. It would be, so we'd be invited eligibility. Then we have and there's a window of period of time where we have to get certain things in for feasibility. So it's 3 years probably before we're really starting to break ground. And
From
then
November? Yeah.
from really from the spring.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So there will not be any earth moving equipment out near Morocco tomorrow, just so everyone knows. But
No,
um,
no, but
and
it's yeah, that's
yeah,
good. So that way we can communicate with our community
right.
what expectations are around that timeline.
Yes, and certainly I think just being able to get the timeline out of we're going to know something in November, and then the December 12th is the board meeting. So I think that's exciting. So at that point too, we'll get more information around timelines. So
Excellent. Great news. Thank you so much.
yes, you're welcome.
I was just going to offer that the Lynch 2025 website, which I think is still up, has a lot of good historical information for a comparison for folks if they want to get a sense of how long this takes. And I'm sure that if we were accepted, we would probably start the Morocco, you know, 20 whatever XX site. So
It would move from What About Morocco to Here Comes Morocco. So,
exactly.
and just for everyone to keep in mind too, the Lynch timeline was extended because of enrollment challenge. The district challenged, didn't challenge, but the district worked with the MSBA to increase the actual build enrollment. So that took up a little time, and then we had a little bit of a pandemic in there somewhere too. So that timeline is a little bit extended over what it would normally be.
Any further questions?
No, that's great.
And I don't see any hands, so I'm
No,
just
I
going to
just
move
said
along.
thanks, Dr. Hackett. Let's move on.
Thank you. So next up, we have consideration of approval of the co-curricular club stipends for 2025-2026. There was an advisory committee of faculty that had met to review the clubs from 2024-25 and make recommendations.
And
And school committee had discussed this in its prior meeting.
Yes.
yeah, so this has been discussed. So in the interest of time and to also honor the good work that folks on that group have already done and express our appreciation for that and our excitement for is I would like to move that we approve the co-curricular club stipends for the 2025-26 school year as presented.
Second.
Thank you. And as we are in remote, we will need to do a roll call vote. Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji.
Oop.
You're on mute.
I
Toby.
think
Aye.
on
Aye.
mute.
Aye. Aye.
And seeing that we have 4 of our members here, the vote is unanimous 4-0. Let's see. Next item of business is consideration of approval of the facilities rental policies. Mr. Marin had worked very hard to update the policies around our facilities rental for KF and then the more specific procedures under KFR. And then he had also developed a policy manual for the facilities rental and a revised fee schedule that was based on comparison to some of our peer districts, and then just a study of our building usage. And we have reviewed this one time before, and if
Unless there's
I would accept a motion,
yes,
unless
unless
there
there's
is.
any discussion, I would move that we approve the updated facilities rental policies, KF and KF-R, and also the accompanying manual as presented in the binder, with thanks to Mr. Marin for all of his hard work on this.
I was going to comment. I was just holding back a second because I just wanted to see if Andrew was presenting on it. So I didn't know if we're getting an overview, and I'll try to be brief, but say that I do appreciate all the work that he put into this. He's really done a yeoman's job professionalizing, benchmarking to other districts, and coming up with a really you know addressing a lot of the issues I think that will help make working with other town bodies easier. The billing system, so we can have things itemized on the on our invoices, and just across the board, really thinking logically about how to I think he did an analysis of space to figure out a per square foot per hour cost on energy use and how that translates into different size spaces we have, like cafeterias or auditoriums or classrooms, and setting fees that were many multiples of the energy cost on there. Um, and I guess I wanted to reiterate, as a climate action advisory committee liaison and energy management liaison, just my sense of commitment that we have as a district and as a and I believe as a committee, to support the town's climate action policies and to work with all the other organizations. And I think what he's laid out here, I think will really help accelerate investments. We care about our buildings being healthy and accessible and sustainable, and supporting our educational program. And we as a committee have made many investments, both in our bully pulpit and financially, in things like Lynch Elementary and HVAC in a lot of our buildings and the envelope on a lot of our buildings and stuff. And so I do look forward to continuing that partnership with all of our town bodies to invest in our buildings. And I think this lays a groundwork for that, to have things were a little bit opaque from the prior administrations coming into here, and so this really lays out in great detail where we stand on a lot of this stuff. And I think it's a really positive place to be. So I would second that motion, certainly, Dr. Matthews. But I just wanted to, since we're not presenting it, it looks like here, I just wanted to say, for community members, there's a tremendous amount. I don't know if Andrew does it. He does this in lots of domains, but to really go through with the rigor and the benchmarking and the professionalizing and coming out with a document like this, I think was really quite remarkable.
Yeah, I
So,
Thank
want
you
to
so much.
echo that. Mr. Marin is really a wonderful asset to the school department. But in particular, as someone who does data in my life, works with data in my life, it's always refreshing to be able to be confident about the fact that there's a tremendous amount of rigor put into comparison data. We've been able, as a committee, to review quite a bit in our binder of comparison data, and be confident that what Mr. Marin presented today is the product of not just sort of trying to pull something out of the air, but rather to really benchmark us and compare us to other communities, and to think about what the best path forward is for the school department. So kudos for that, and thank you for all the work, and thank you, Mr. Hopcroft, for the second.
I
Thank you.
do just have a quick question. So regarding the Energy Revolving Fund, the ERF, um, do any changes need to be made there, and does it need to be voted on by anyone else?
No,
Okay.
if I understand your question, which I think I do, because it was pretty clear and succinct, but no, it doesn't need another vote.
Okay.
This is all in your purview.
All right. So the ERF just falls within the school committee's purview. We don't need select town meeting, no one.
Correct. Yes, correct. And part of the reason why that is true is because of the vote that was taken a couple of years ago now, that expanded the ability of school building rental funds to be able to be spent not just on the building in which it was being rented, and that was what we were cut off against before. So if we rented, um, Ambrose, any funds that came in for that rental could only be used on Ambrose, and technically could only be used in the space that the rental was provided. So the vote that the town meeting took a couple of years ago now really allowed us to address other issues within the district, which was much needed because some of our buildings aren't rented as much as others.
Great. So that vote was done by this body, or was it?
It was down by town meeting.
Town meeting.
It was
Yes.
done by town meeting. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And all in favor, Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji,
Aye.
Thank you, and the chair votes aye. So the vote is unanimous. Just, okay, thank you. And we will move on to, so let's see, consideration of approval of MASC policy updates for sections D, K, and L. From, you have had this in your binders. And there have been no questions about this yet. The only item from section D that we will pull for this evening is policy DDA. And that will be taken up in a later policy subcommittee meeting.
And
If
also,
there
I
are
will
no
point out that
questions.
since we
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was going to point out that since we waived the first reading of the ones that were erroneously not included in the binder for our last meeting, they were in the binder, but rather they weren't in the agenda for our last meeting, then we are able by school committee policy to consider this the second reading and therefore take a vote on everything. So, Madam Chair, if
Thank you.
it's okay, I will try my best to do these motions. I know I've had to do this with policy subcommittee a couple of times before, but I'm going to just run through this quickly. So let us start here. There are policies with no changes recommended. And so that is just to be clear to the committee, is just an FYI from the policy subcommittee that we have reviewed
policy
those
subcommittee has
policies and
reviewed those.
added a new date to them. But Madam Chair, I believe we decided previously that we don't have to vote to put the new date. We're just using that as an FYI to the committee.
That is correct.
All right, so I would then move to start, so that those policies are KA, KCB, KI, and KLK. So moving along to the ones that are in here with minor changes. So I would move to start. So I guess I'm imagining I'm going to probably do a series of motions if that's okay. And then hopefully we can vote it with, I will try to put this all into one motion rather, and we can vote them all at one, but they might have slightly different purposes. So first of all, I would move that we accept policies with minor changes, KBA, KBBA, KDD, KHB, KJG, KLJ, LA, and LB. I would further move that we accept policies with more substantive changes recommended as presented in the packet KBE, KDB, and LBC, as well as I would move that we include policies for addition to the Winchester Public Schools Manual, KDCB, and that we delete policy KJA as recommended by MASC from our policy manual. Further, I would move that we accept the recommendations regarding other policies in section D and section L. I believe that covers everything. Please correct me, Karen, if I'm wrong, because I know you're the other person who knows this well.
I would say that if we look at the redlined document for section D,
Yep.
it lists the the policies from section D that we would be taking up. And it would be everything on there except for DDA.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
which maybe that's
yeah, so DA, DB, DBC, DBD, DBG, DBJ, DD, and then we removed DDA. So then DGA, DH, DI, DIE, DK, and DKC.
Everything
have a
but
second?
AC, everything but ACDC. Sorry.
Do we have a second?
I knew there was a good joke there. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Hopcroft?
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji?
Aye.
And Dr. Matthews?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And I'm just scanning my. And the vote is unanimous.
And thank you. Thank you
very
to our
much.
chair and our chair of policy subcommittee for once again getting us through a giant chunk of these policy updates As I said at our last meeting, in many cases, it's been 10 years since we updated any of these, and this has been sort of under consideration for more or less the past 3 years, trying to get all these into alignment with MASC updates, as well as making sure that everything's current to now. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all your hard work on this thankless minutia, on these thankless
And
minutia.
thank you too. So
I
it
would
takes
second that.
it,
Thank you.
it takes a village. So all righty, let's see. We'll move right along. Discussion and consideration of approval of the school committee vision statement. And you have in your binders an updated copy of the vision statement along with our mission. And
So
school committee has been working on this in its workshops over the summer, just developing and honing a vision statement that captures what we believe is in line with our mission statement. And Dr. Matthews, if you have some further comment.
yeah, so what I was going to say is this slide actually is a way of distilling down the work that we've done this summer. So during the workshop, what we had intended to do was to kind of move to a next stage of fleshing out our mission statement. Now, obviously, I think for some who have experience in the nonprofit world, this may feel a little bit backwards. Typically, a vision is the highest level and the mission is the fleshing out of it. But since we already had a mission statement that was previously in place, the way that I kind of conceived of this and the committee then discussed it was that we would take our mission statement as an inspiration to put together a more broad vision statement of the sort of desired state that the committee would like to see education in Winchester aspire to. And this is especially important as we go into the state of the town process, as well as as the committee continues to develop its budget priorities that we're sort of broadly calling WPS 2030, the vision we'd like to see for the district in the next 5 years. After a lot of discussion in workshop, as well as I know we discussed this briefly at a prior meeting, we are bringing this today as a distillation of the aspirations of all of the 5 committee members during these workshops for the vision that we'd like to see in the Winchester Public Schools for the next 5 years or so. The mission statement is not, just to be clear, to be approved tonight. That's something that's already in place and it's already out there. The thing that's new is everything under the large headline that says draft for consideration vision statement from 716 workshop discussion. And I think this will then allow us to go out to the community and continue to tell a story as we've been working to put together in our State of the Town meetings about what kind of a school community and school district we would like to see. So if there are any questions, happy to take them. But otherwise, I did my very best to both, and then had the chair's support in editing this, but did my very best to put together and capture every single thing that the committee members said in our brainstorming and sort of distill them down into this 4-paragraph format.
Any comments or discussion?
Stephanie has a comment.
Yeah, it was
Oh, thank
mostly,
you.
thank you, Dr. Matthews. I think you did a great job capturing our discussions over the summer and highlighting the key points that we wanted to use to drive our motivation as a committee. So I just wanted to thank you for putting this together. There was a lot of work that went into these words, and we were very mindful of every word that we chose when we were having these discussions. So, and I think that you captured that well. So thank you again.
I really appreciate that. I enjoyed doing this. It was fun to sort of see the different little pieces of each committee member and the things that are most important to them. And I feel like it really represents a jointly shared aspiration for the schools.
And I'll say I appreciate this as well. It looks great. It looks I feel like I've seen it a few times in our packet and elsewhere. I think there was a note that the change had been made today, which in reading this I'm not spotting other than adding the mission block at the top. But I'm wondering, was the change that was made today substantive?
No, so it was largely our chair and I trying to remove extraneous connector words in between things. to try to make it read a little bit more tightly. That had been one of my frustrations in putting it together, is when you do try to connect so many words that are words and phrases that people have brought out in a brainstorming. Sometimes you end up using too many connector words, and our chair, as always, has a great eye for those and sort of helped to distill down to what we have. It didn't change I don't think it in any way changed the meaning of it. It was just making sure that we didn't have extraneous words in and could say it as economically as possible. So
Yeah, I didn't see anything missing. That's why I was like, what changed? But
magic.
yeah,
It was a little bit
Right,
of
just like little tiny words.
magic today, and
Right.
I had been frustrated as well. There were certain things that I had were clunky and weren't really 100% what I wanted either, and we managed to just, I think, really get it to be more economical and tight today. So concepts haven't changed.
so I'm
Yeah,
also very comfortable with this. If do we need, is this something we're voting on tonight? Do you need a motion for it, or
if the committee would like to take a vote on it tonight, then yes, absolutely.
so I'm happy to move that we approve the school committee vision statement as outlined on this slide here.
Do we have a second?
I'm happy to second if that's okay.
Absolutely. All in favor, Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji,
Aye.
and Mr.
Okay.
Hopcroft.
Aye.
I'm still scrolling across the top of the screen. The chair votes aye, and so the vote is unanimous. And Dr. Matthews, thank you so much for leading this over the summer, all the work you've done to pull together 5 disparate members, input, and just make it very eloquent and beautiful. So thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
It's good and important work to do, and I look forward to the work to come around our community's priorities and funding our schools. So thanks.
Absolutely. Next up, we have a discussion and consideration of WPS 2030 5-year operational priorities. Dr. Hackett had introduced this to us at our last meeting. So I think Mr. Mayor will be pulling up the list of priorities.
Just to note also, Ms. Bergstrom is with us, so
Oh,
I
great.
believe it's her. We took a little bit of a risk. Is that you? Can you confirm yourself being here, Ms. Bergstrom?
I am myself.
Phew.
I
You are
am.
yourself.
It's just
We're-
didn't want
we're
to,
just-
didn't want to have a Zoom bomber in 2025. That would be super embarrassing.
Was she here, Ms. Bergstrom? Were you here for the last vote?
I was.
Do you want to be
Oh, would
included
you
in
like
that?
to
You
be
can count me
included?
as I.
Okay, thank you.
And
The
also
vote
my
is
thanks
unanimous.
to Dr. Matthews and the whole committee, because I think it was a lot of collaborative conversation to get to that.
Yes,
It was
thank you.
really
So
good.
I'll just note that the vote is unanimous 5-0. So thank you.
Thank you to our note taker.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
would you like me to start?
Yes,
Sure. Okay.
please.
So we have done a lot of work. This is not what you're looking at right now, isn't what you have been working from. It's a rolled up version of the detailed 5-year WPS 2030 budget priorities that we've been working on, that you saw at the last meeting, that you've had workshops on and conversations about, and primarily for the purposes of talking to the state of the town and having them have the information about what our priorities are. This is a higher level overview, and we will tighten it down a little bit more, but it does kind of show, I think, year over year within our 3 goal areas where our priorities are. I think, as we continue to work on this, we know how budgets go and we know how priorities go, and things can change. What we didn't want to do, and we can present more detailed information at a later date or to state of town. But we also don't want to get locked into, and this was advice given to me by one of the members on this committee from prior experiences. We don't also want to get into a situation where it's kind of a line item choice, because the committee is the one, you as a school committee are the ones that set the priorities. and you take your priorities to through the process. And in a normal year without an override, we present them to town meeting, and town meeting makes a decision on the bottom line budget number, not on the individual priorities within the budget. So kind of consistent with that, we felt that it was probably better to kind of roll these up a little bit more for the purposes of these initial conversations. We can put dollar figures on the categories. We can tease it out a little bit more before Friday's meeting. But we just wanted to just show the idea of this rolled up so that we're not in a situation where we're saying that we know exactly what we want in 2030, because we know that things can change. But these are the kind of general threads and themes. The central office leadership team has looked at these, and we continue to work on these. The large leadership group has been involved in looking at this as well. The work will continue. So we wanted to start here. And Andrew, if you can bring up the newer version of this version is, and if you could, not sure this is in their packet too. Andrew and I worked on this today, just because it's a little bit cleaner version of what we were looking at before with the pull downs. But it does show in the goal areas what we've identified currently as what the priorities would be year over year from 26-27 through 29-30. And Andrew, if you want to just kind of scroll down through this, these are all on the WPS 2030 document that you've been working from, the spreadsheet that has the colored spreadsheet that you've been working on since the spring. So there's nothing here that's not on that in that. We just thought it would be might be helpful to clean it up a little bit, so you could kind of see it in a little bit of a different format. Some of you have reached out to me with some feedback. We've tried to address the feedback in here, but this is for your for purposes tonight for discussion. And if you're more comfortable working off the one that you've been looking at for the last couple of months, we can pull that up too.
So Dr. Hackett, are the we have general classroom at WHS in some of the out years? Is that addressing the capacity constraints in some of the like the AP classes and other areas?
It's focused on computer science possibilities, elective possibilities, art, those electives that we do get tied up with that we don't have capacity. So yes, it really is more about capacity than within our existing program, with the exception of that we do feel that we want to kind of start pushing on getting some more computer science, logic type courses that would be available for students. It's an area where I think we have, and we've talked about this before, where there's room for growth for us. But yes, it is definitely trying to address some of the options that students can choose from. And one of the things that Dr. Allen and I talked about in district leadership meeting, she can elaborate later. But we're really doing is, because as many of you know who have a high school student, they go through, even middle school, they go through and choose their priority, right? They here's my first one, here's my second, right? And they list out what they really want, which is helpful, and every one of our students gets one of their priorities, but their third priority may just be something that they just put down because they had to put it down. So what we're starting to try to figure out of just collecting the data and getting at, what are the first priorities that our students are identifying, and how are we doing with placing students on those first priorities as part of this overall conversation. But we definitely know every year we're oversubscribed in areas like art, music, for example. So we're really trying to address those needs through this.
Yeah, I know it's a challenging area to try to manage, and I have a kid who's in a different language than you wanted, so I get that happens too, and that's fine. It'll be a great language, but also we talked about some electives, but also the general, and I see them both reflected in there, and we do spend a lot of time appropriately on making sure that we meet every student's needs in terms of supporting them, and I've had kids that have taken advantage of some of that support. But also we hear from the community about, kids who maybe are bored or they want to be in a higher level class. So just making sure that, I don't know where, if you consider, to me, AP is kind of a higher level of a core class. So I
Oh,
don't know if that's
it,
elective, if that's core, but
well, yeah, I mean, it's meant to address all of what you just said, right? So
yeah.
it's also, we do have students who are who the schedule gets constrained for a variety of reasons. We're only able to offer certain number of sections for certain levels. So the effort here is to address all those needs, but it's also, I think, as importantly meant to broaden out the options that our students have, so they have chances to explore as well. We did talk very specifically about world languages at the middle school, and how in sixth grade, the default language becomes Spanish when the students can't get into their first choice, and that's a decision that stays with them through several years of their secondary academic life, and how part of this is also trying to address potentially some of those capacity at the middle school level as well. That's one example in world languages.
Well, I'm looking forward to traveling to some Spanish speaking countries once Teddy learns Spanish. So
And
Thinking
I just want to pick up on that, Dr. Hackett, and say the other thing I've heard is, and I know this is something that we've discussed before, but the other thing I've heard sometimes from parents is, how do we deal with kids who have second, sometimes even third languages that they already speak when they come into their period during the public schools where language instruction is offered? Like, how do we actually deal with those particular students? And are there elective opportunities for, sort of native speakers who might not be great at writing proficiency in a language that they do speak fluently, for example? So, yeah, I think a lot of opportunities in that area. But yeah, thank you. The other thing, if it's okay, I just wanted to say very quickly, I appreciate, in particular, Mr. Marin, if you're the one that has control, I would love if you could just scroll up. Um, in particular, I love that we pulled the field trip transportation up to the first year after this fiscal year, because I know that's been an issue that's been raised pretty strongly from some of our communities. Just the fact that there are different experiences to which kids have access across our schools based on how much is able to be raised for transportation. So being able to just guarantee that every elementary school in the district gets the same amount of transportation funding so that they're able to take field trips, because I really see those as being extensions of the classroom. They're activities and enrichment opportunities that kids should all have access to, regardless of which of our schools they go to. And so I like that we pulled that forward. The other thing I wanted to say is, we're very grateful, obviously, for the work that's been done this year to get some of our pilot programs started. But the other thing that I think we really do have to be mindful of is that those have associated costs with them as we move across the years. In particular, I'm thinking about our literacy curriculum pilot that's going on this year. We obviously know that was funded out of free cash as a standalone article at town meeting, but that is going to have, because of, as we've said numerous times here, the sort of Netflix model that curriculum has shifted to, that means there is a yearly licensing cost, that is going to be a cost that moves forward across time. So that's not the only area in which obviously we're trying to make some positive change at McCall as well, in terms of the schedule and giving kids access to things, as well as in other areas. So just the math specialists in the elementary level is another one that's definitely going to have a sort of part two cost. So thanks for including all that, but really appreciate the work. I think the last comment I'll make is this is very much driven by the state of the town process, understanding what the needs for the district are. It turns out that our vision statement and WPS 2030 all work in tandem with that, and understanding what the real financial needs are for the next 3 fiscal years after this one, and making sure that we have a really good solid input to offer into that process in terms of what we think are the really integral things that we need to have funding for in our schools. So thanks to you and Mr. Marin for putting this together, and look forward to continuing the conversation. This is just sort of feels like a next step on a path that we're all walking, as opposed to something that's completely finished or done as of tonight.
Correct. And
I was going to
just,
say, Dr. Hackett's
yeah,
put
just
up his
so
hand.
no, you raised a point, Dr. Matthews, that I think is important to address for those who don't look at this every single day, like all of you and us. It's important to make the point that none of these are one-time costs. So when we scroll down through and we're looking at the totals, for example, the total in FY27, that $2 million number is a year over year number. There's really nothing in here at this point, other than we have the elementary math piloting, and we've got a number in there for that, but that could eventually turn into, to your point around, the year over year licensing fee or licensing number. So I think it's just important that people understand that, we're talking about, this is absolutely program improvement. And one of the things that we did not address in this, and your comment about the transportation made me think of it. We made the assumption that fees are still in play. So if there's interest of the committee to talk about transportation fees, athletic fees, as you have talked about before, we would just we could absolutely look at that. That's not a hard lift to show you what the impact of that would be and what we would need to have in the budget to be able to manage that. So we're ready to do that. We've done it. You've looked at fees 1,000 different ways over the last couple of years. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Bergstrom?
Yeah, I want to echo a little bit of Dr. Matthews' sentiment, but take a different spin on it a little bit in that I appreciate the work that you and Mr. Marin have done, and the fact that we actually started this work before the State of the Town Committee. That this was actually driven by a lot of input from parents and educators and community members, and it's really useful to us as part of the State of the Town Committee. But what I appreciate is that I feel like this is our genuine priorities. We have not developed these priorities looking to drive an override, or because we think that, we understand that there may be an override on the horizon, and therefore we're looking for things that we need to improve or expand. These are priorities that have been, in some cases, long deferred in the district, and in many cases, some of the things on the list are things that have come up and up again. And I think about other organizations in town that have talked about other sort of crises of funding that they have had, and the district has. While we are a well-funded district, there are many things that we don't have that many of our peer communities do have, and many opportunities that we'd like to be able to give our kids and include as part of programming that year after year we just can't do because we are doing level funded budgets. So I appreciate the long-term thinking on this and how we've gone deeper and not just driven towards a number. I know one of our priorities on that has been making that the experience kids have in the classroom every day to not cost parents additional money, so I really appreciate the district transportation for field trips and covering the cost of field trips. I am looking at the instructional materials, and I'm wondering if that number is large enough for us to not have to be sending home supply lists to parents every year too. If that's an expectation that we could sort of build into this budget where kids come to school and they have what they need, and at least at the elementary level, not have to continue to send those long supply lists home every day. That's a question that is sort of on my mind around that. And I had one other question, but I've totally lost it, so I'll let you answer that one. And if it comes after Miss Minyarji, if it comes back to me, I.
So thank you, Ms. Bergman. Just to answer your question directly, those numbers we need to tease out more. That really is a an increasing of the per pupil allocation that we provide. So to really get specifically to, is it enough money to cover the supply list? We will need to work on that a little bit more and get a little bit more information. Everywhere I've ever been, even when there is enough money for classroom supplies, and I've been like maybe 2 places in 28 years where that's been true, but not to brag, but the supply lists still go out because parents also want to know what they can do to contribute and how they can help support teachers in the classrooms. But I think you're absolutely right. What are the essentials that our kids, regardless of what, who donates what, need to have, and that needs to be in that line.
Yeah, it would be nice if ideally it would be lovely in a world where those could be wish lists and not necessary lists.
Right, exactly.
The I did remember the other question, Miss Minyarji, if she'll indulge me just one sec. Um, and I'm glad Dr. Matthews brought up the point about the ongoing needs when we adopt new curriculum. And I think about that, the way we take care of buildings. We need maintenance on our curriculum, and we need maintenance on any thing that we add to the district. It's always nice to bring in something new, but if we don't account for the year over year maintenance, then we're really not getting the value out of the initial investment. So I love how we can see the threads through, and on the first sheet that you had, that we're considering what maintenance costs of maintaining the things that we need to add to not only provide kids the services they need, but the experiences that we're providing to them as well year over year. Because I think that there would be a danger. I think that, like, I look at the elementary literacy program implementation, it's super exciting to think about a new literacy program in the district. But if we don't have the ability to maintain that over time and continuously be able to provide PD and even the hard costs around it, the photocopying, the new student workbooks that you might need year over year, whatever comes with the program, the renewal of the books that go in kids' hands, then we've really lost out on that initial investment over time. So I just wanted to thank you for accounting for that, and for that first sheet that you had up that I think really illustrates that well too.
Thank you. Ms. Minyarji?
Okay, so I know we talked about this last week when we looked at, and I appreciated Ms. Kirby highlighting the path towards a math pilot for next year. I was just wondering if we were going to be able to have a conversation, or if a committee similar to the ELT was going to be formed um, for the upcoming mathematics pilot, like an EMT. I don't know, maybe that doesn't stick as nicely. For mathematics, so that was one question for the mathematics pilot for 27, FY 27. And then two more notes, maybe not, maybe they'll segue into a question. One is classroom materials. I appreciate Ms. Bergstrom bringing that up, because $46,000 for the class list is very light. That would cover Ambrose alone. That's what I think the cost of the classroom list would probably be around $40,000 for Ambrose alone. So if that's something that we're thinking about doing, then I think we should revisit that figure. District transportation for field trips. So that's not covering the cost of field trips, just the buses back and forth. The cost is 10,000 per elementary school as of right now, and I see 5,000. I thought I saw 10,000 last week, but I guess it says phased implementation. Does that mean we want to play catch up in the out years for this plan?
Yes, it doesn't
Okay,
have
so
to be. I mean, we can front load it.
I feel like it's such in the larger scheme of things, it would be 10,000 per elementary school, so 50,000 per year, and it's such a high impact investment. That $50,000 is such a high impact investment. Like we said, it creates equity between the 5 elementary schools. A significant parent effort goes behind this, and again, this just covers a portion of that cost, even still, because you have to pay for admission into the Museum of Science, into all of the different activities that you're going to. And on average, I believe it's 25,000 for those activities plus the 10 for district transportation I'm sorry, for bus transportation for those field trips. So just calibrating those figures a little bit. High impacts, like we've said, it promotes equity between the 5 schools, and it's activity that's happening during the school day, an expansion of the classroom. So yes, I agree, I support, but that seems a little light. Um, yeah, so those are my questions and thoughts. If you want to go back to the pilot, my first question was around the EMT. I don't know if that's the acronym we want to go with.
Well, you're coining it right now, so I don't know if we have a
I
choice.
don't like it. I don't like it
Okay,
actually.
all right. Well, you know what? We'll workshop it a little bit before we
Has
start making t-shirts. Um,
it has an association with emergency
How about
medicine, so no thank you.
I, well, and I
so
think
how about
I was gonna say, didn't
EMCC, Elementary Math Curriculum Committee?
That's what
do
we
I
were going
remember
with. That's what
incorrectly
we were
that
talking about.
oh
How about
wow.
EMC.
this?
Yes.
Guys, I got it. EMC squared.
Right. Right. So we were having fun with all of that. And yes, where that is in our future. And right now we are just working. Julie, the math coordinator, is working with Melissa. And we're just looking at the systems and structures that are working in regard to this pilot and what has worked, what hasn't. But all along the way, we're teaming up to really take a look at how are we identifying students who need support? So the MTSS, and then we're looking at how we're using this data and the data teams, and do we have the data that we need? And we're doing check-ins and getting feedback on the resources that are already in existence now so that we can think about what those next best steps are. But yes, a committee will be formed and you're on to us. EMC, stay tuned.
EMC squared. Yes.
Stay
and
away from
Ms. Miarji,
EMC
I'm
alone.
also supportive of your second effort to support both transportation and field trips. I think this is just a complete aside. I think we might, if we are truly saying it's for equity, we might also have to partner that with a policy initiative. That the expectation is that every student have one field trip per year, because I could see where it might become necessary for certain schools to have a second field trip that would then be supported by a very enthusiastic parent association or a or parents themselves in a building. So I do feel like I would be fully supportive of a covering both transportation and one field trip per class per school per year, if we say that that's not only the expectation but the limit if it's being funded by the district, if
So
we're
we
really looking for equity.
So we can we can do it any way you want to in terms of where we put this in the 3-year plan. It's not, we broke this out, I think, just to also understand that, there's where we think we might have some capacity issues. That's certainly not one of them, right? We're already doing field trips. So we can front load the field trip transportation costs. And if you'd like us to explore what you just said, which is an allocation for every student to be able to do one field trip, we can also explore that.
I think we need some faculty input on that
No
because I think that
question. No, I'm
varies
not
by
choosing that.
grade level. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't either. I think that we need to get some faculty
Yeah.
input on that because I know for like for kindergarten, for example, usually it's at the discretion of how big the group is, the expectations for that group. So I know for K, sometimes it's difficult to go on a field trip in some years than it is in others. So I'd like to just hear from our educators on that. But yes, I agree.
And Ms. Mignardi, I wasn't saying that they had to go on a field trip, but the limit would be one if we're looking for
Oh,
equity.
okay. Yes, yes, yes.
I was just going to say, or I'd echo the comments made by all of the members, just on, we have to be mindful. I appreciate that this 5-year list exists, and I definitely agree. I remember talking about the WPS 2030 strategic plan at Fall Town meeting last year. And then I've appreciated the work that the budget subcommittee has done with Dr. Hackett and Mr. Marin over last fall and through March, April, May of this year, with just developing this prioritization over the 5 years and fleshing it out and putting numbers to it. So I agree, this work has been long in the making, especially in this last year, but even before that, with strategic planning from the school committee and the school department talking about this for quite some time. Also, I also feel mindful of the fact that with the funding that we have gotten towards literacy and the and over the course of over this year, we do have to appreciate that these costs will continue to come to us in future years. It's not just one time, as Dr. Hackett was saying. And then with regard to field trips, I was just going to say that there are also, as a former enrichment coordinator at the middle school, there are also field trips that have been done at the middle school, particularly in 6th grade, um, where at least one field trip will be, and I'm trying to remember, but I thought that one field trip was about $5,000 for the class to go to. That was just for transportation, to go to the Museum of Science, for example. And so, while I appreciate that we have that, and I appreciate and I support the idea of having the field trips at the elementary school, I'm wondering if we're also thinking towards middle school, at least 6th grade.
I would be supportive of that as well. I think from an elementary point, I think it's because it's 5 different buildings,
Mhm.
whereas
Yep.
middle's
Yes.
one building.
One big building.
One big building. So I guess that is more from an
Mhm.
equity standpoint to make sure there's no variability across the 5 buildings. But I agree. I think we should be supporting any activity that happens during the school day and that requires additional funds from parents.
Because right now it's being split between the PA and parents funding field trip, admission fees, and busing.
So when I
Just a
just so
thought.
yep, absolutely, and we appreciate it. Just also being mindful of your time tonight.
Yes.
We have details that like that we will continue to work on for you, and we'll continue to have these conversations. What we were hoping that we've at least captured, and the feedback tonight's been really super helpful, and we'll make adjustments. And then we'll come back with other numbers. But what we're really hoping is we've captured what we've been talking about, what you've been talking about the last several months, to Ms. Bergstrom's point, actually over really almost over a year now, in this document. And if there's anything glaring to you that we haven't captured, and you see it tomorrow or tonight or whenever, please just reach out to us, and we'll make sure it's in there. But we've worked hard to get to this point. So thank you.
And I think it's
Dr.
great.
Hackett, would you like a vote?
Yeah,
Actually, Dr. Matthews, maybe you were going towards that.
I was going towards exactly that. I was going to say that I'm happy to make a motion that we authorize the superintendent to share this the updated, not reprioritization, the updated prioritization, building on the work that was done last spring with other boards and committees in the town, to the extent that that's appropriate, with specific view to the state of the town presentation that's happening on Friday.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I have a second, but I also have a question.
Me too. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, obviously, all of these numbers are estimates and are subject to change, correct? It's just I don't want to harp on the buses, but can we not do the phased approach and just ask for the full
Yes.
10,000
Yep.
upfront?
We'll front load it. Yep.
Okay.
I guess I have a question for the state of the town committee. I'm not entirely comfortable sharing this entire document with the state of the town committee. I would like to go back to the document that Dr. Hackett had originally shared, that it was at a much higher level, where items are shared by category and not by individual line item. I have concerns putting a document out that looks like a budget document to town boards and committees, especially for a budget that's next year, that includes next year's budget, when we haven't even had a conversation about that ourselves as a committee. I'm concerned about other boards and committees being able to start to redline our budget before we have an opportunity to do that ourselves.
That's reasonable. All right, I'm open to people if there's other views, but yeah, we have the ability even after we approve a budget to move things within our budget. So I see a lot of the detail as a way to inform the categories, but having some degree of flexibility uh, amongst those categories makes sense, especially while we're still haven't voted a budget yet. So,
Well,
but
Other
I'm just
comments?
I'm just afraid that at our last meeting it was presented, not the same document that we're looking at, but something similar. So hasn't that already been made
I,
public?
I I was going to say it's already a public document
It
because
is
it's
a
in the
public
binder.
document.
It
So
is a public document, but I think it's a difference in communication, Ms. Miarji and Dr. Matthews. I think taking a document like this that has categories and costs associated with it is a different messaging strategy than bringing a line item document. Bringing a line item document says that that's it. I feel like it's our last and final budget when we bring a budget to a committee for them to build a budget based on with individual line items in it. And it is giving them control over our budget instead of us control over our budget.
So Dr.
So-
Hackett,
Yes.
I think you were about to say, so the way that you presented it at the beginning, I was super comfortable with because obviously we have the ability to change and update this at any time.
Right.
The challenge, for those of us that are actually serving on State of the Town right now, I think the challenge is that there's a model that's out there that is in its early stages, that's been presented to the committee for the first time. I think that model is essentially right now waiting for a signal as to the breadth and depth of the potential additions that the school department is hoping to see. As you said, Ms. Bergstrom, the sort of things that have been deferred over years, the things that we've considered in the past that were sort of on our 2030 plan already in last spring's budget season. I think the idea here is not to suggest that we want to have any picking through of our priorities. I think ultimately it comes down to the committee to decide if, sort of X amount of money is made available for additional investment in schools. How do we actually want to allocate that? But I think the sort of question, it's a chicken and egg problem because the question that's out there right now is, sort of what does the upper bound of what would be needed should we actually invest in all the things that we know would move the needle for our students and families, what that would look like. And then I think ultimately the prioritization comes back to us, but it's hard to know what the sort of upper bound number is. If we were to roll, for example, all of these things currently on the screen in over the next 3 fiscal years beyond this one, what would that number look like? Obviously, the town does not have enough in free cash and currently budgeted to come in from tax revenue to meet all of these needs. So we'd need to know, what by what factor the tax levy would have to go up in order to actually, meet the priorities that are currently on the screen, if that makes sense.
I do, and having been a part of this process before, I also realized that coming in with an entire shopping list of items too early on that without just bottom line numbers. For example, I could see a document such as the one Dr. Hackett has up on this screen in each box having an amount attached to it. And at the bottom of the column, having the amount year over year that we would need to add to our budget. And
So
that being the initial document that we bring to the state of
I
the
was
town.
going to actually suggest would that work in this particular situation? If you had a total for each box and then a subtotal under each column.
So I didn't do a good job front loading this at the beginning of the meeting. The intent of what you're looking at in this is exactly that. So our intention now is we need to have a detailed conversation just to make sure at some level of detail, we've captured everything that the committee has talked about. We've captured the things that leadership has talked about, understanding that those things will continue to change. But if Mr. Mayor takes us back to that spreadsheet that we were working off of tonight, what we would be looking to do, and we could do it by goal areas. So if you just look at the first year for 27, we have 3 goal areas, right? Operations and system supports, teaching and learning, and community cultural well-being. Each one of those has a subtotal with an overall total for FY27 being 2.2 million. So I think, my thinking would be that we could do the subcategories for each one of those, or we could just take the 2.2 million and use that as the FY27 allocation or needed amount to do what we were talking about here in spirit. I think people will be. I think the detail that we provided in the slide that we put together for tonight gives people the sense of, okay, no one's going to be surprised that we're talking about funding literacy initiatives. No one's going to be surprised that we're talking about mathematics initiatives, right? And so from my perspective, I 100% agree. And that was advice that was given to me by someone on this committee, that we don't want to get into line item. I don't think anyone here wants to get into that. And I think it's a good cautionary tale, because while we understand, right, how our budget works and it's not line item, this is what worries me all the time. It's like when people talk about a new building project, and out of the gate they say it's going to be this amount of money, and then 4 years later we look up and it's 30 or 40% more than that. Naming the number early is challenging and can be somewhat dangerous and misleading, because that's what people hear, and when they hear it, that's what they lock into. So the whole thing is tricky. Definitely the state of town needs to have some numbers, and I think they need to have the general direction of the priorities. The priorities are your priorities, they're our priorities. I think we can be clear about that in our presentation. But in the end, when you just kind of scroll down through here, it's about $4 million that we're asking for over a 5-year period for actual program improvements, which would be in addition to, obviously, these are not just rolling budget our budget forward and paying for what we currently do as part of the process. So I don't know if that helps, or if people have a preference on the subcategories, is that important, or is it just the year over year dollar figure by fiscal year? Understanding that we're not going to say, I think we need to round the numbers up a little bit, so we're not looking so precise, because that would be a little foolhardy too, I think.
Mr. Hopcroft has
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah, so no, I was going to well, I do have a question, I guess, as well. But I was gonna say, I think that the detail is definitely important, because if you just said for teaching and learning we need $2 million, I'd be like, what's in that? And so seeing the sort of atomized components of that, I think, is really important for our discussions, and understanding that a lot of that's fungible, and it may move between one thing and another, but it helps us know what the priorities are that we're assigning $2 million to. I do tend to like, although I'm open to hearing if there are if it's important, if other departments are using this level of granularity, or whatever cases on the other side. But generally I like the idea of that higher level grid, but the with the dollar amounts for each area. The one thing, I guess, I was curious, because I heard Dr. Matthews talking about, what sounded like sort of our wish list. That they want to know what would be the maximum we would get. And as I was looking at it, as we were talking through this, I wasn't thinking this was everything that I wanted. I was thinking this is sort of a reasonable way to meet, the needs of what we've been not delivering every year. But if it's a high end, I think we may want to add some other things into it. But I wonder if in each of those boxes, if it might make sense to have a range that says, meeting the needs, the obligations that we have, not just level service, but what we think is delivering a Winchester class education, is this. And our wish list, which I often call our Wellesley list, is this. And say, it's going to be somewhere between these two numbers.
Love that, Mr. Topcroft.
But
I do
otherwise,
too.
I think the higher levels.
Although I think that could, I feel as if then people could still say, oh, okay, well, if you've got a range there, so let's hit the bottom range number.
Well, but
But this
bear in
is the
mind,
bottom range number.
This
that's
is
what
the
you're
bottom
saying.
range number. Okay.
the bottom range is a full on Winchester level. What people expect when they move to Winchester for their education. So it's not not having access to classes and programs and things. And what we do in the past, I wouldn't even put on the range. Yeah.
Right. And to the earlier point that Ms. Bergstrom made, we've been working on this for well over a year, and it's been well informed by the surveys that we've done and you seeing those data. It was very loud and clear from both staff, teachers, as well as from parents that, we need to better support what we're trying to do now. That's really what a lot of this is. I mean, there's nothing fancy about anything here. I mean, I would love to have thrown a couple of central office positions on here too, but what I've been told that probably won't sell an override. Certainly, central office by itself was not successful. That's not what people want to hear and see, and it's not the priority. The priority right now, and I would say this is essential funding. This isn't. There's no bells and whistles on this. We don't have a literacy curriculum budget, right? I mean, had we had a literacy curriculum budget for the last 10 years, we might be in a different position than we are right now, right? So we don't have a math curriculum budget. We don't have a lot of the supports we're talking about here. There isn't a school system worth its weight that isn't already they don't already have some of the things that we're talking about here, if not most of the things we're talking about here. This is classroom instructional supports and professional development. I mean, there's not much else on here that's not that. So we kind of see this is essential to what we're trying to do. It does allow for some program improvement, like, to be able to actually have a conversation and try to fund a theater program, which I think is also look around. There are a lot of school systems that are of the caliber that we are, have that. So we really didn't see this as the upper end wish list, because I think we're entering that level of also practicality, right? I mean, we need an override. If we don't get an override, it's gonna be a very different conversation. It's not gonna be a conversation of addition. It's gonna be a conversation of subtraction. So we think these are the things that should go in an override, but the other big component of the override is just to fund what we're currently doing. So if the committee wants to, and we're wide open to that exercise, extend beyond this, we can definitely start to do that and have those conversations. We're trying to meet the timeline that we think is in front of us with the state of town, which is an awkward timeline for us in terms of our regular cycle. We're trying to meet that timeline. We're trying to do it in a room where people are, there are people in that room who aren't going to necessarily be supportive of any level of additional funding, right? So we're trying to come at it from a pragmatic, practical standpoint, so people can't look at this and say that's ridiculous. Now, some of it they may, but it's hard to argue, I think, with many of the things that are on this list. They're just fundamental.
So can I just follow up with one thing? So that's great. And I would just say that if people in the state of the town think this is our wish list, we need to make sure we give them the wish list. Then that we have a higher end to it. If this is just delivering the services, which is what I think it is, then we need to make sure state of the town understands this isn't their wish list. This is just the basic needs. That was my point.
Ms. Minyarji?
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. I don't, if this
I'm
is
sorry.
our shooting for the stars. No, I know, I appreciate it, Tom. I think you made a good point. I'm backing you up here by saying,
Thank you.
if we're going to give ranges, this is the lower end.
Yeah.
And if we want a complete wish list, there are a couple more things that I'd like to add here then. If we're shooting for the stars, I don't think this is the complete list then.
And
So
that's
I
not the
appreciate you.
intent of this list. Yeah, it's a good, important distinction.
Yeah.
As long as they
Like there
understand.
is some program expansion here, and I do think that it addresses some of the concerns that came out of the survey from last year. For example, advanced programming, and expanded world languages. I do think it addresses those concerns. Mathematics, yes, but again, if we really want to craft our school district of dreams, I don't think this is the complete list.
Dr. Matthews?
And if you want, do we want to
Oh.
use this meeting as an opportunity to throw more out onto that? Do we want to schedule another workshop session? I know we're really pressed for time, but I think that, again, out of the interest of time and the deliverable that's expected at State of the Town, we should at least present this as a bottom limit,
So
or a bottom part of the range.
can I just add, I mean, I think the timeline we're trying to meet right now is the initial, right, is the initial expectation. So I think there is time, and I think the points that you're making are super important. Like, I almost see this as like really version 1. I mean, even though it's like version 97 for us, I think we need to be clear that this is still a work in progress. It's not like these numbers are going on the ballot. And I don't understand the timeline of state of the town, but you still have a budget that you got to develop for FY27, right? So I think this is our best effort, and it's our best and current thinking about what we think is essential for our school system, and it will continue to need to be worked on. And it's kind of how you approach the budget, just the general operating budget last year, with moving that timeline and giving yourselves more time to really fully consider everything that you felt you needed to be part of that process.
And I think that's why I'm not comfortable sending this list forward as this list to state of the town.
This specific list or
This specific list.
yeah.
Because once we send it to state of the town, it is the list.
Dr. Matthews, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't see it necessarily as the list, but what I will say is, and I think this is a really important point, right? I think we're also aware, as I stare at the sum in green at the lower right-hand corner, is that there probably also is, based on historical examples in Massachusetts, an upper bound to a total number that, is feasible to pass at the ballot box for an override, right? So during the spring budgeting process, I was at a finance committee meeting where somebody, I mean, I don't know if it was serious or jokingly, was talking about a $30 million override. 30 or $35 million. I just don't see the town of Winchester passing an override of that magnitude. So I'm also mindful of the fact, that we have limited capacity in the superintendent's and finance and admin office. And so I also want to make sure, to sort of address Mr. Hopcroft's point that we don't, I think we all acknowledge that there are many things we would like to have in the case that we were Wellesley, but we're not Wellesley. We don't have that level of commercial taxation, and we definitely are dealing with a different reality. So the other thing I want to do is make sure that we're not, as good as it would be to create a list that does include all the things we would like to see. I think we also have to include enough and just make sure that we don't put pressure on to spend time creating a list that involves things that are not reasonably feasible to expect the voters to pass. So I agree with you, Dr. Hackett. I think what you were trying to say is you felt like this was a good first step and also a reasonable understanding of the most vital things that really represent a pretty substantial investment that might, sort of be up to and including the number that, could theoretically be passed, even if it were the largest override in Massachusetts history, that might, be able to cover the things that are currently on this list.
I'm just going to point out it's.
Just
Go
to
ahead.
make one point, I just happened to notice that as you drew my attention to the 4 point. That's 1,000. This represents $1,000 more per student. Is what this 5-year plan represents. We're investing approximately $1,000 more per kid, and not even year over year. But in the end of it, we'll be up about $1,000 more per kid. And not to go back to the whole point of per pupil costs, but I can tell you that $1,000 more per student definitely moves the needle, definitely makes a huge difference for us. But it also doesn't put us in the top 25% or the top 10% of all per pupil expenditures. So to your point, Dr. Mancy, I mean, I think this has been the challenge of this exercise, is balancing out the timeline, the audience, being pragmatic and really thinking through what we really need. But what I'm very comfortable with, and I understand we don't want to line item this, but I am very, very comfortable because we've spent so much time and energy on this. I'm very comfortable what's on here in the broader categories. Like we know what we're doing. Like there's nothing on here that should take anybody by surprise. So I think trying to find that balance of how do we present it and what do we attach the numbers to will be the trick.
Mr. Hopcroft, and then I'm just going to point out it's 6:20 p.m. and some of us have expressed that we have some hard stops, and we still have
Yes.
fall town meeting articles to get to.
And I was going to make that point as well. And I just wanted to say that my intent was not to suggest that we create a longer list. My intent was to say, just make sure that we communicate properly what this is, because I thought I heard that this was our wish list, and it's not our wish list.
Okay, with that,
So
I believe we had a motion
I had made a
and
motion, yeah.
I'm not sure if we had a second because I can't remember.
We did not get a second to my knowledge.
I would accept a second.
I did make a second, but second again.
Sorry, I missed
And then
that,
just
Marcy.
to clarify, we are, sorry, just to clarify, we are looking at the first page, which had the broader categories with just the or subtitles, I'll say. Subheadings
And the ability for,
and some,
I
And
don't
numbers
believe that's what the
the-
motion was. I believe the
That's
motion
what
was
I'm
for the
wondering.
second page.
yes, that is what I'm wondering. So would we like some clarification around that?
So can I ask just a question?
Yes.
Would it make sense for us, for you as a committee, because of the way that your budget process works, which is you develop the budget, you approve the budget to bring to town meeting, and the town meeting votes on the budget? Would it make sense for you to vote that you are moving forward with a recommendation for $4.5 million as part of the overall operational override for program enhancement, or whatever way you want to do it, however you want to word it, so that there's the number, right? I mean, that's what matters. That's what they really need to know, to plug in. And then you can, as part of that, these are the general categories that those investments would be made in.
and is that all subject to our budgeting process too? I'm
So
fine with that. It's
moved.
just directional information. Second, yeah. So, do we have to withdraw the prior motion, or is this new motion in second?
I was going to say that we might want to clarify for the sake of the minutes. We might want to clarify that motion and then,
I think the spirit and the intent of your motion is fine. I think it's just as long as it's maybe clarified that you are moving forward a recommendation of $4.5 million for an operational override that we are associating with a 5-year plan for these program improvements in the areas that are represented here.
okay.
Y-
And is
and
that
this is just-
captured in Dr. Matthews' motion?
Didn't like that, Hopcroft?
No,
Well, I'm just
I said
wondering
so
if that's
moved
captured.
a minute ago. I thought you
Okay.
were just clarifying it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, this is just additional improvements. It's not, doesn't count any of our rollover, and
No,
No,
and
no.
this is over can you remind me the what number of years?
We have this plan is a 5-year plan.
So is it
So-
4.5 million over 5 years?
it's
I just
4.5
can't-
million
I can't-
over our level services budget. That-
Right.
Okay, I just can't see it anyway.
So the motion would be, we would be moving forward 4.5 million. I don't have the exact number in front of me. It's not up on the screen anymore.
I think 4.5 is fine.
Okay, $4.5 million over the period of FY 27 to FY, is that
Yeah, it's
29 or
It's actually a
30?
4-year period.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it? But which FYs is it? FY 27 to 29, Dr. Hackett?
Yes.
Yeah.
FY 27 to 30.
30.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I guess my concern about this is, does it then limit, if the committee only says a top line number, does it then limit our ability to communicate? I mean, I'm just sort of lost about this is already a public document because we've discussed it in open session. I just guess my concern is, like, does it then limit those of us who are representatives on state of the town from discussing the line?
No,
Like,
I don't think so at
that's-
all. I mean, I think we know what we're after, right? We know the broad categories that we're going after. We could be 2 years from now though and say, you know what, we really need another mathematics specialist at the elementary level because of X, Y, and Z. So I think the point with Ms. Bergson's making is that, if we say we only want 2, and then we figure out we really need 3 because things change, we don't want people to say, well, you said 2, so now, what's the deal? And so I think the conversation has to be around the broader categories of, literacy, mathematics, instructional supports in the classrooms, professional development, and we can kind of, if we want, we can kind of chunk those off and say, this is of the 4.5 million, this is what we're looking at for literacy. This is what we're looking at for mathematics. This is what we're looking at for professional development. And, we could do ranges with that. So
Yeah,
I think you're,
I think the ability to do that is really important and helpful, just so that folks are aware of. And I mean, I think the other part of this is it's a communications exercise of saying this is where we reasonably, on September 16th, 2025, this is where we sort of reasonably believe things stand. And, on September 26th, 2025 or September 26th, 2026, we could be in a different place. And ultimately, it comes down to what town meeting is, what the voters are willing to vote in terms of an override, and therefore, if that passes, what town meeting is willing to allocate to us in our bottom line budget. So I think a lot of this is a communication exercise to say this is just where we are right now, and we can certainly see that there are other needs as well that we haven't even covered, but this is kind of, our best estimate of what would be needed to make that, as you said, additional 1,000 per pupil investment.
All right.
So is
And
the
I think it's
motion,
important to note that we don't have a pony for every student in this budget. I think that's important to note that.
Man, and I already bought my stable.
We're barely getting a bus for every school.
those are fighting words to our chair, so let's
So,
so could you
so we
chair
made a
or
motion to move forward the
clarify?
$4.5 million, I think.
Okay. And
I feel as if it came from like 3 different people. So,
well, that was the most recent motion, and I seconded
all
that one,
right.
and I'm
Okay.
comfortable with that.
All
And I
right.
just want to make sure that's the one
So,
we're
so
voting
I'm
on.
happy to do that with the proviso that we be able to sort of talk about categories and inputs to it as well,
Yeah.
because I think that's going to be an important part of it. So if that can be a friendly amendment.
you're
Okay.
already authorized, aren't you, as representatives of,
Yep.
say, the town committee to represent the committee?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, with that, all in favor, Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Ms. Bergstrom,
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous. So thank you very much. And we'll move on to the last item of business, which is the Fall Town Meeting articles, discussion and consideration of the, article for enrollment and demographic study. And we had, just see.
I'm
The
Madam Chair, I'm
verbiage
happy
for
to.
this have been added to your binders today, and Dr. Matthews, I believe,
Yeah,
will speak to
I'm
that.
happy to take this because I'm the one that put the language together. So this is basically based on the conversation we had at our last meeting, as well as the public comment made by Dr. Brian Vernalia, who's the chair of the planning board, and a reach out from him that had occurred at the State of the Town meeting the week prior to that, stating that the planning board had an interest in obtaining funds as well for the use of the GIS software that the town already owns in some form. Wanted some consulting dollars to help train those who might use that for purposes regarding the work that the planning department does as well. So what I tried to do with this, and I've passed it by obviously Dr. Hackett and Mr. Marin as well, and Dr. Vernalia is aware that I was hoping to get the committee's approval on this tonight, and I believe they have a meeting this evening as well. But yeah, I guess the idea here would be that we vote to place this article, to direct the chair to have this article placed on the fall town meeting warrant, and then leave it to the planning board to consider this as well if they wanted to co-sponsor it before the warrant closes this Friday, the 19th. But
Second.
basically, yes.
Has-
So I'm happy
Thank
to
you.
make the motion
Any
to.
discussion?
I thought you just did. Sorry.
No, so let me just read the motion. I move that the school committee authorize the chair to forward the text of the recommended article above to the town clerk for inclusion on the warrant for fall town meeting 2025 before the warrant deadline, and to further authorize the superintendent to work with the town clerk and town council to make minor refinements to the language as needed as the warrant is finalized. That just precludes the necessity to come back to the committee if town council
Yep.
decides that they need to make minor changes.
Second.
I have one quick question which could be answered in a single word, which is, do we need to have any monetary figure in this, or can
We do not, and that's actually
Okay, so
something
no.
that we discussed. So what needs to go into the warrant before it closes on Friday is this part of it. The actual motion language is the thing that will have the dollar figure attached to it, up to and including $1. So we have removed that for now.
Thank you. That's more than a word, but thank you.
Thank you. So all in favor, Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Ms. Bergstrom,
Aye.
Ms. Minyarji.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous, and I will move that right along to the town clerk this week.
And I also see that
Um,
Dr. Vernalia is joining us as an attendee to the meeting. So hopefully we can just communicate to him that this now has the 5-0 full support of the school committee. And we would love to have their partnership and co-sponsorship on this as a great illustration of our town bodies elected and appointed working together.
That's right. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, Dr. Hackett, I believe you had said that we did not have need of an executive session this evening.
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So our next meeting will not be next week, the 25th. It will instead be, I believe, October 9th at 6:30 p.m. And with that, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Ms. Bergstrom,
Aye.
and Ms. Minyarji.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And thank you so much. We are adjourned at 6:32 p.m.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
work.
Appreciate it.
Cam.
Thank you, Wincam.